Welcome to Saturday's Warrior, the channel where we talk all things BYU, Big 12. We do a lot on realignment. And tonight we are doing our latest installment of our segment called Know Your Foe, where we bring on guests to represent the opposing fan base from the BYU's opponent for the upcoming week. This week, obviously, UCF. And with us, we have Roger from the TheKnighted1s Podcast. And he is one of our fellow members of the College Huddle, which is the largest fan-led college football community out there. And Roger, thank you so much for joining us tonight.
Hey, it's my pleasure. And just returning the favor, you also joined us for our show. So if you want to get Trevor's take, or at least what he says to the opponents, you can come check out our latest episode, which will be dropping probably early in the morning tomorrow morning
on Wednesday. So that'll be out prior to this video. So I'll go ahead and make sure that is down in the comment or in the description of the video, so you can link to that as well if you want to go see the flip side of this conversation. But Roger, why don't you tell us where we can find your podcast and all of your content?
Yeah, all of our content, you can find it on YouTube, Spotify, Apple, anywhere your normal podcast content is. Obviously, YouTube, we've got YouTube Shorts, we've got video as well that goes along with that. And then we also conveniently put an audio podcast out on YouTube too, for those of you that watch YouTube at work when you're not supposed to, so it doesn't show up on your screen.
That's very thoughtful of you. I don't want to shortchange you because you're also a co-host of the College Huddle Big 12 show. So tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, Calvin Alexander and I, we do the Big 12 Huddle. So that's where we cover all of the teams and all of the relevant information, predictions, all that kinds of fun stuff for the entire Big 12. It's a whole lot of fun. We have a lot of our fellow podcast members join us there as well when we're talking about big games, etc. So check it out, give it a listen, give it a follow. You can find that. It's a YouTube exclusive right now, but I'm trying to talk Calvin into distributing it via podcast as well.
Great. So again, all of that will be down in the description section. So after watching this in this video and liking it, and if you haven't already, subscribing to this channel, then you can go check out Roger's stuff. And whether it's the College Huddle, the Big 12 College Huddle show, or the TheKnighted1s, and get to know the UCF team a little bit better. Team that is also a new member to the Big 12, like BYU. Well, not a new member. We're seasoned now.
We're old heads now.
Yeah, exactly.
We're a year old.
But still not a lot of history between the two teams. We've played a little bit over recent years in football and basketball as well. But this is the first time playing each other in football as members of the Big 12. So tell us a little bit. I think a lot of people are familiar with Gus Malzahn. He's obviously very well known throughout college football and very seasoned and successful coach. But tell us about him coming to UCF and what he's done for that program and kind of the identity that this program has taken under him.
Yeah. So, Gus brought a certain panache and or panache, if you want to say it properly, and reputation to UCF. UCF's always been known because we've moved up in conferences every 8 years or so, starting from Division III and moving all the way up to now the Power 4 conferences in a very short period of time. So that means typically when you're winning, you lose your coach, right? They move on to another higher level, etc. So UCF, other than Coach George O'Leary, really hasn't had much stability as of late. But our identity has been get hot offensive coordinators who can put up a lot of points and make us competitive against larger teams, right? Or more established teams. And that kind of switched with Gus. So Gus brings a lot of respect from the college football community. as far as the identity is concerned, he really has pushed making Central Florida, specifically Georgia and Alabama, but primarily Central Florida, the home for UCF. There's a lot of football players that come out of Orlando, that come out of Tampa, in that surrounding area. So he's done a really, really good job of making them what he terms hometown heroes. So from a recruiting perspective, you get a lot of capital when you have Gus Malzahn knocking on a recruit's door, and has really helped us, make that transition as far as recruiting is concerned. When we're talking about results, there's a lot of mixed bag there, and Knight Nation as a whole, if you go check out our Twitter right now, is all up in arms because we're used to winning, and we're not winning at the clip that we're used to right now. And so there's a lot of questions as to whether Gus Malzahn, is this Gus Malzahn, right? Or is this not? In fact, last year was the first losing season that Gus Malzahn has ever had from high school all the way up to college football. So there's that trajectory. There's a lot of questions around the trajectory of where the program is going to go. Last year, we had 5 straight losses in a row, and still
I can't imagine what that would be like.
Yeah. We still finished with a bowl game, but lost in the bowl game, and that's also not very characteristic of us, right? So this year we started off fast. We had KJ Jefferson that we brought in to lead the team from a quarterback position. We brought some more established transfers in, some high name transfers. Spent a lot of money. We spent over $400,000 on KJ. And by all accounts, media, otherwise, internally, et cetera, we were expecting KJ Jefferson at Arkansas in 2022 and not what we got in 2024. It just, unfortunately, it didn't work out. If you watched UCF football for 3 games, it was terrible. We also, at the same time, brought in a transfer from Miami, which is Ja'Curry Brown, who was our quarterback last week against Iowa State, got his first start with UCF. And, Gus Malzahn is all about the running attack. His culture is we're going to run between the A-gap every time that we can. We're going between the tackles. He's also got a lot of eye candy to start with. At the beginning, you'll see a lot of movement in the backfield before the snap, and a lot of motion after the ball is snapped. So there's always going to be movement, and the idea is to set up the run fits. The challenge for us is that in the past, we've usually used the screen game, or we've used pitches, sweeps, jet sweeps, et cetera, to kind of stretch the defense and get them out of the tackle box a little bit. And we weren't very successful with that this year. So from a culture perspective, we're a run-first team. We're trying to get better at defense. We're at our best when we get out to a lead, and then we can grind clock. Unfortunately, it hasn't worked out for us in a few of the games this year, and that's largely the ineptitude at the quarterback position and necessitated Ja'Curry Brown coming in and stepping in. And we got our first look at him last week.
Yeah, so I want to follow that line of thinking into the offense. But before we do, I forgot to even bring up some of the most important, crucial questions here. And this is something you and I talked about on the Big 12 Huddle in a previous episode. But give me some insight into why UCF fans are so particular that it is UCF and not Central Florida.
Yeah, that's a big deal, right? So UCF has spent a lot of time being told you need to join a bigger conference, or basically your wins don't matter because you're playing in the various stages of conferences that you've played, including the American, right? When we moved into the American, it was the Big East, and that was our opportunity to finally play power football. And unfortunately, at that time, the Big East was in the middle of imploding. There was teams that were leaving. We actually were offered, and then we didn't actually get into the Big East. And by the time we got into the Big East, it was the Big East for 1 year. And that was the 2013-2014 season. in which we beat Louisville, won the championship, went to the Fiesta Bowl, and beat a very hot Baylor team that everybody said that we weren't going to beat. So
UCF was actually in the Big East for 1 year, because I thought by the time you got in, it was, okay.
Yeah. So we were there for the last year, and we won the last. It was the BCS at that time, so it was the last auto bid for one of the bowls, which was the Fiesta Bowl at that time, was the tie-in, and got that auto bid under the BCS. So we were there for the very, very last year of it. Then the Catholic Seven separated and whether you like it or not, Oresco decided to sell the name to them. And so the Big East then was renamed the American Conference. And so, Louisville left shortly thereafter to go to the ACC. It was going to be West Virginia or Louisville to the Big 12. They ended up opting for West Virginia. So then Louisville went to the ACC. So we still had, when we were there, we still had Rutgers in the conference. We still had Louisville in the conference, and a few other names that you would know. SM Poo that now is, bought their way into the ACC, etc. But yeah, so going back to your original question, because ESPN, and it's a big thing, we were always wanted to be known from a branding perspective as UCF. And you would see various, and it became a big thing on Twitter and everything else, where it's kind of like calling us a quote unquote directional school, although Central isn't really a direction. So having that moniker, they say C. Florida all the time, or they say Central Florida or whatever, would never call us by the name that our program wanted to be called, that we put our media out there for, etc. And it kind of became a thing nationally with, a lot of the college football commentators out there as a way to kind of diss UCF and make it seem like a small school. The UCF is not a commuter school. It's a big school. And now we're in the big time. So, for us, UCF and being called UCF and having the appropriate branding nationally is kind of a big deal. So it seemed like a poke at the bear.
Actually, the size of UCF is one of the big selling points, I think, for getting into the Big 12. Not the only one, but definitely a contributing factor, because as your alumni base continues to age, it is going to get to be quite significant and very large, and in a significant state as well for recruiting. But and then the other thing was, there's the confusion about the nickname being the Knights and the Golden Knights. So for a time, you guys were the Golden Knights, but then that went away. So tell me about that. Yeah,
we've been a lot of different things, right? So we started off as Florida Technical University, right? And the university is really young. It was founded in '69, and it was founded as a space grant university. So when you start wondering, why do they have that weird kazoo-looking guy with an orange belly? It's because we were originally founded to basically be a pipeline for engineers for the space program out at Cape Canaveral, which is about 35 miles away. So UCF had a variety of names, none that became official until finally they landed on the Knights. So UCF was the Knights, and it was the Knights for a very long time, except for a very brief rebrand in, I think it was 2004 or something like that. For the span about 5 or 6 years, they changed it to Golden. And it was the Golden Knights at that point. And that change, actually, I think it was a little earlier than that, and they changed it back in the early 2000s. Well, they changed it back to the Knights, not like to be mistaken for the Ohio State, just Knights, and it's the Knights, right? And, it kind of became a thing where, again, it's kind of like the UCF versus Central Florida versus CDOT Florida versus everything else, where national commentators know all of our branding was UCF, but they kept calling us the Golden Knights. And especially during the 2016, 2017, 2018 runs, UCF has always had a chip on its shoulder as a fan base. both with the in-state schools and nationally. And so it kind of became a thing to kind of throw some salt on the wound for those folks that, especially national commentators, because they knew they'd get engagement from UCF fans. And UCF has one of the top Twitter troll bases. I'm not going to call it a fan base, troll bases in the country. So they knew they were going to get a lot of engagement out there. It was mentioned if you watched Game Day or you watched any of those other, it was constantly with Kirk Herbstreit or anything like that. There was this infighting. It made for good television and obviously a lot of engagement.
All right. First of all, I grew up in Michigan, so any dig at Ohio State is appreciated on here. But going back to being taken seriously in Florida, I mean, we're talking about Gus Malzahn already. I would argue that he is the best coach out of any of the schools in Florida right now. So that's, something you can, feather you can put in your cap. But going back to where our conversation was headed into the offense. So you mentioned KJ Jefferson, who you guys wanted the 2022 version of him, who embarrassed BYU, and BYU got back at him in 23. Now that game was, relatively, that was pretty close and somewhat fluky in some ways. But BYU was prepared for him and did their best to shut him down. And now he ran into issues. So tell us real quick, what were some of his issues, and how did the other quarterbacks on the roster perhaps do some of those things better? Or what are you hoping to see from them that he couldn't do?
Yeah, I mean, KJ Jefferson, I actually, at the time that he was playing for Arkansas in 2022, et cetera, I was already aware of him because at the time I was dating someone who was an Arkansas fan. So she, I had to watch Arkansas football. And so KJ Jefferson was doing some really, really impressive things at that time. He had a good offensive line. 2023, he had a terrible offensive line. And you guys know that since you played them. He had injuries, etc. Well, when he came to UCF, he was already a little overweight. He's a bigger guy anyway. And he checked in, they were saying 255 pounds was what they were saying he weighed. I wouldn't be surprised if it wasn't 260. There's all kinds of rumors, and we'll get the full story outside of camp. But, people that watched him during camp, folks that are insiders or folks that are high dollar donors, because unless you're at a certain level, you don't get to watch camp or practices. Basically, we're saying, and again, this is conjecture, I can't confirm it, but a lot of people were saying the same thing, that essentially he was missing, he wasn't taking it seriously. He got paid, and he wasn't doing the workouts. He wasn't refusing to do the diet plan. He was refusing to, he didn't really practice in the off season all that much. So he just wasn't in it. His head wasn't in it. I think he thought he could go out there and just, do what he does best, which is do what he does best when the play breaks down. Unfortunately, that doesn't work well. He's a pocket passer primarily who can get out of scrapes and then make things happen with his feet. And Gus's offense, the quarterback position, that is another running back. It's almost like if you think about the old wing T type of RPO type offenses, the quarterback in Gus's system is a running threat. KJ was too overweight, to be frank, to be effective in that role. In addition to that, he didn't pick up the offense like he should. He wasn't, there was one game, which is the second half of TCU, where he really ran the offense really, really well. Outside of that, he just didn't do a good job. For Ja'Cory Brown, we have another young man, which I haven't mentioned yet, named E.J. Colson. E.J. Colson reclassified from 2025 to 2024, was 17 years old when he came to UCF. He's a highly rated four-star quarterback. He was won the state championship in back-to-back years, leading his team in Georgia at quarterback, and was MVP for the state of Georgia 2 years in a row as well. So he's a good quarterback, but he is young. So he reclassified, joined us in the offseason. He actually started for the Cincinnati game and played the first few series, but the moment was, you could tell this is a freshman. I think he may have just turned 18. Back there, he's got the attributes. He's just not ready, but he's been shining in practice. Jacuri, what he gives us is the athleticism. So he's 6'4", 230 or 30 pounds, I think, 230, 35 pounds, and has really, really good speed. The challenge with him is he's got a big arm on him, but he has not been with the ones at all this entire season. And so he kind of got thrust in because he was the quote unquote backup for EJ in that Cincinnati game. So he's only had a week and a half basically running with the ones. His accuracy has been questionable, but from a running perspective, he put up 154 yards last week against one of the top defenses, the running and passing defenses in the country, in Iowa State, who only allowed on average 10 points per game. And he put 154 yards up on them in, I think it was 13 or 14 carries. So the kid can run. He's got speed. He can stretch the offense. So instead of doing the tunnel screens, we have a lot of quarterback, either RPO, or we have plays where it's a designed quarterback read, and he's got the size and the speed to be able to hurt you with his feet. And that's primarily why he's the starter right now.
Okay. Well, he definitely, I try to catch a little bit of a lot of the Big 12 games. I haven't really sat down and watched any besides BYU from, beginning to end, but this Iowa State UCF game from last weekend was one that I got to watch a larger chunk of. And I thought he looked pretty good in that game, and obviously helped the team take the game to the wire against a very good Iowa State team. So, but the guy who really stood out to me on offense was Harvey, RJ Harvey. Is that?
Yep.
Right. Yeah. Sorry, I said it and it sounded wrong, but yeah, I mean, he just looked very impressive. And with BYU having issues, stopping the run, we watched what Ollie Gordon did in an identical game to the ISU UCF one in terms of score and the way it finished and everything. Really gave BYU trouble. So talk to us a little bit about your running back.
Yeah, so RJ Harvey is a special talent. He's actually a converted quarterback, believe it or not. He was a quarterback that originally went to UVA as a quarterback. That's where he had committed to. We were recruiting him at the time as well, but we wanted him for running back. They wanted him for QB. He wanted to stay as a QB. He's an Orlando kid. He's not that tall, but he's very muscular. If you see that guy, in street clothes, you can tell he's been honing his physique for the entire time that he's hit the weight room hard. So he's a bowling ball and very hard to bring down. He's also a very patient runner, and he's got a quick jump cut. So RJ Harvey, he's averaging somewhere around 7 yards per carry right now for the season. We've been using him on 17 to 18 touches. Last week, he got just under 20 touches and still put up just shy of 200 yards against Iowa State. So you had a running back putting up around 200 yards. You've got another quarterback who put up 154 against you. That's a lot of rushing yards. So we can run the ball. We are the top P4 rushing offense in the country right now. So RJ can hurt you in a lot of different ways. He's got pretty good burst, but he's solid. So he gets yards after contact, and he can also catch the ball out of the backfield when Jacuri, actually the wheel route is one of the routes that has been very, very successful because it got him into space and away from the tackles. So he can hurt you in a variety of ways. He can catch the ball. He can run. He's solid between the tackles, but he's also a patient guy who will wait for his blocks to open up. But once he's out, he's very hard to take down after that, right? So once he gets past the line of scrimmage, you're not going to arm tackle him. He's just a very massive human being, and when he pumps his legs, he's going to be gone. Now, the other part about this is we have two other running backs. We actually grabbed Miles Montgomery from Cincinnati last year, who is the number 2 running back. He got hurt when we played against, I think it was Cincinnati we played against. He got hurt, so he was out for a little while. So RJ's been carrying the load, but usually he did play a few snaps last game. Usually you'll see a heavy dose, and he's kind of a change of pace back. Still the same type of speed, a little bit better speed, still the same size, and very, very slippery. So he's good. And then Penny Boone, who was an All-American last year, we picked him up. He was over. We have 2,000-yard rushers in our backfield right now. He's a bigger back. He can kind of run you over, and he's on the roster as well. So I expect this game against BYU that you'll see RJ quite a bit. You'll also see Miles Montgomery if he's fully healthy. I think they were kind of testing it out last week, and you may see some Penny Boone as well. So you've got fresh legs throughout the game.
Great. You're making me feel really good. So what other notable players are there on the offensive side?
So our top receiver is Kobe Hudson.
Mm-hmm.
That's somebody that you should keep an eye on. The problem for Kobe, when we use him, the problem for Kobe right now is Jakuri. And what I mean by that is Jakuri he averaged like 3.3 yards per attempt. So very short passes that he was connecting with last week. And he was off, whether it's timing because of the ones, he's got the arm, but the touch just wasn't there. And Kobe Hudson was going into the change from KJ Jefferson. He was leading, or one of the leading receivers in the country for both touchdowns and receptions last year. He and Javon Baker, who ended up getting drafted in the 3rd round, they were both 1,000-yard receivers, both catching touchdowns, and Kobe led most of the way. So he's a transfer from Auburn, and somebody that you should know. The other one offensively would be Pittman. Pittman is our tight end. He's our pass-catching tight end, and he's got really, really good hands and can make people miss once he plays almost like a receiver, but in a tight end's body. So you need to make sure that you're keeping your eyes peeled for them, because those are the other two that can hurt you with the pass. If Jakuri can settle down, get his feet set, and be a little bit more on target with his passes. All
right. So it sounds like there's lots of weapons there, and it's no wonder. I mean, I know early UCF obviously has had its struggles this season, but early in the season was putting up a lot of points. So it goes to show definitely the potential there to get the offense going. Is certainly there. So how about on the defensive side of the ball? What is kind of this defensive philosophy, and what should we expect to see from this team, and who are some of the standouts?
Yeah, so on defense, it's pretty interesting because this is an evolution, right? So Ted Roof came in. We did really poorly against the run last year. I mean, really poorly. So Ted Roof was brought in. He was Oklahoma's defensive coordinator. Left Oklahoma, came to us. He's kind of known for fixing defenses and then leaving. This is actually his second go round at UCF. He was hired by Coach O'Leary, came in and then was here like 2 weeks and then took a job at Duke or somewhere else. But he came in. He's more of a hard-nosed, traditional type of defensive coordinator. He's a guy who's going to show a lot of blitzes, and you can tell the defense, one, because we have a lot of new pieces that have kind of come into the defense, and just because it is a new defense, has been getting better. So last week, we had 3 sacks. We had 2 pick sixes. One was a pick six, but the guy, he dropped it about a 1 yard out trying to run into it. Yeah. So luckily for us, it rolled into the end zone. Nobody was aware of it. Nobody touched it. So it was a dead ball foul. We got the ball back and we scored.
BYU almost had one of those too, but fortunately it was still ruled a touchdown. But those plays infuriate me.
Well, the guy who did it is someone you should keep an eye on. His name's Braden Marshall. He's a 4-star local kid who came in and found the starting rotation really, really, really early. Obviously, he had the pick six, but he learned something as a freshman really early, which is, yeah, you don't do that or else you don't get the touchdown. How often do pick sixes occur, right? So I'm sure he's kicking himself. But we're going to play 4 down linemen. We're going to bring blitzes. They're getting more complicated. At the beginning of the season, they weren't very complicated, but we had a new middle linebacker in Ethan Barr, who was the starter at Vandy, who's doing really, really well this year. And then we also brought a couple more Cincinnati players over that you might know. Deshaun Pace being one of them. He was one of the top defenders in the country on that team that went to the playoffs. And he's kind of a linebacker / DB. So we'll use him in both positions. Sometimes he'll be in coverage. Sometimes he'll put his hands in the ground. But you'll see a lot of movement now and shifts. We'll bring a safety down sometimes. Sometimes we'll drop a safety or bring a safety down like we're going to put them in a blitz and then pull them back into coverage. So you'll see a lot more variability in those defenses. And the great thing about that is we're establishing the pass rush. So against Florida, we looked really, really good. We held them to no points in the second half. And against Iowa State, we did really, really well, considering we had the ball for 22 minutes. So for almost 40 minutes, our defense was out there, held them to 6 of 16 on third downs. They did do a little bit better on fourth downs, but what you're seeing a lot of now is the pressure is finally getting home. Between hurries, sacks, it's causing the quarterback to be disrupted. And because of that, we play a lot of one-on-one in the DBs. And Brandon Adams actually had a crazy stat coming into the season that he had never had a touchdown for 3 years thrown against him. So he was one of the top DBs in the country coming into this season. He's kind of taken a step back a little bit this season, but he did have one of those pick sixes last game. So he's going to be someone to keep an eye on. Deshaun Pace, and then Lee Hunter. He's our big defensive tackle that's on the inside. He was very disruptive last game and someone to keep an eye on. Teams have been double teaming him. This is his second year at UCF. He came over from Auburn, and he's 320 pounds and can really move people. So he's a road grader, and he's pretty athletic, and he's got a mean streak. So that's a guy to come to keep an eye on in the interior lineman. We had Nigel Kelly from Miami, who was a big 4-star recruit, got hurt his first year at Miami, didn't play. So he transferred to us this year. Unfortunately, if you did watch the ISU game, you saw how slippery the field was. We think he got hurt. He will be back. I don't know if he'll be back for this game. John Walker, our other big 4-star defensive tackle. We were in a big battle with Florida for him, ended up winning out. Another hometown kid. Unfortunately, he got hurt early in the season as well. So he actually ended up having surgery on his knee, so he's out. But Josiah Pierre and trying to remember this other kid's name, Jason something or other. Anyway, he's another defensive back that Chasen Johnson is his name, and he's a DB who's really been coming on strong, both in our return game and then also as a defender. So lots of talent on the field. We just haven't put it together. And largely a big part of that has been this defense rounding into form, getting some plays under their belt. They've played really well the last 2 games. And, the biggest thing that you guys are going to be able to take advantage of, though, is that we play, unfortunately, not a lot of press man or on our man coverage. So we're not disrupting the routes of the receivers. We'll play soft coverages on that. So that's going to give you guys an opportunity, if we give your quarterback long enough, to find some open receivers. If you either get the ball out within a few seconds, or, we give you longer than 4 or 5 seconds, you're going to find an open receiver.
Okay, so that brings me to kind of to sum it all up. If UCF is to win on Saturday, what do they need to happen? What do they need to have go right for them, or what have they executed that has allowed them to victory? So what's their path to victory?
Well, limit turnovers. That's been a problem for us uncharacteristically this season. When we played Cincinnati, we had 2 fumbles by the same guy within 6 minutes. We've been finding ways to turn the ball over. Last good. Game we did not.
Finding a way to capitalize on that.
Yeah, so ball security is number 1. UCF can't give up possessions, especially because we like to control possessions, right? So if we're giving the opposing team possessions, that's going to be a problem. We need to maintain that 3rd down percentage and get guys off of the field. If we 6 of 16 is good, but there were lots of opportunities that we could have got them off the field on 3rd down, and our guys were slipping, or, their quarterback got out of some tackles. Like Lee Hunter had this guy wrapped for a sack, and he somehow spun out of that and still was able to throw it down the field. That's a 320-pound defensive lineman. So, we've got to make sure we're getting off the field on 3rd downs, ball security. If we are successful with the run, stick with that, but we've got to get some of our passing game, whether it be screens, because we've started to see screens again, which we hadn't seen all season, and wheel routes to be able to keep guys out of the box. If you guys can keep your guys out of the box and we become one-dimensional, this is going to be a long game for UCF. So we've got to find a way to do that to win. So for me, keys to the game: 0 turnovers, get off the field on 3rd down, and make sure we're not allowing you guys to make us one-dimensional and stack the box. If we can do those 3 things, we've got a good shot at winning this game.
Okay, so, and to put you on the spot, do you have a score prediction for this game?
Yeah, we do score predictions for ours, and as you know, we recorded yesterday. I actually said UCF 32, because I'm never going to pick against UCF. I actually told in the Big 12 Huddle, if you listened last week, last 2 weeks, I thought UCF had a better chance of winning the ISU game than they did this game, because you guys have good size on your team. They play fundamental football, and I'm not seeing a whole lot of weaknesses, and you've got a decent running game that you've got to move the ball down the field. So for me, I'm going to say UCF because it's the home team. I originally said 28-24 UCF. I think that may be a little bit low on the scoring side of things. But as I think about it, it may be higher for both teams, to be honest. But I do think it's going to be a close game.
Yeah, so this is right now. I think Vegas has this game as a pick 'em, but consistently all season long, this has been, or even from preseason, this has been the game that ESPN FPI has had as BYU's least likely to win on the schedule. And so I think a lot of that is BYU has not played well going east. In fact, I can vouch for that because living in Virginia, I have been to many of those games and have unfortunately witnessed a lot of losses. I'm actually going to share this. So I put this up for a poll, but you look at this. These are all games that I have attended as a non-student at BYU over the years. And there are a lot of L's there. And so, and I put it up to as a poll. I didn't get a whole lot of responses, but ultimately I said, should I go to the game this weekend? Looking at going either yes, nothing can stop this team, or never go to another BYU game. And that one won out. Even my own brother voted against me. So he will be at the game. I'm not sure he's any better luck because he's had a lot of those with me. But I think it is going to be a close one. It's going to be a tough one. And I'm with you on that. I don't really know. Like if I kind of agree that even though we go to Salt Lake and, this was even before Utah, was having a down year and they're still expected to be really good. I still saw this as very much a very difficult game for BYU. I think something advantageous for BYU is that we've played this last week, a really close game. It got punched in the mouth, and it's nice to when that can happen and you can learn a lot while still coming away with the win. And so I hope that this was a bit of a wake-up call, but also a way to kind of test BYU's defense and show them, okay, here's where there's some issues where they can be exploited by a team with a really quality run game. And so I'm hoping that there's lessons learned in time to prep and make those adjustments going into this game. Having said that, I don't feel super great that BYU is going to win this, but obviously, like you, I'm not going to pick against BYU in this case, at least in games where, in years where you're having a good season. So I definitely think BYU could come away with it. I really don't know. I've a lot of games I've kind of instantly kind of had a feel for how I thought the score was going to go. And a lot of those turned out, some of them turned out close, others were way off. But this game, I don't even have a feel for it. So in my head, I was kind of thinking like 38-28, but I really have no idea. Anything could happen, I think, on Saturday. And I'm really excited to watch it. Unfortunately, I won't be going like I was hoping to. But for all the BYU fans that are traveling to Orlando, obviously there's tons of things to do in Orlando, and people are often going there for reasons outside of football. But for around UCF campus and around the university, what do you have any recommendations of things to do or restaurants that people should go check out?
Yeah, it really depends on, if you're there for the weekend or not, right? So like if you're just there for the game, you're going to fly in, fly out. That's a little different of an experience. Orlando is where the world vacations, like we like to say, right? So most of you will probably have been to Orlando. There's a lot of BYU fans that live in Orlando. But pregame, definitely, if you're staying around campus and you're not tailgating or something, and you want a real cool, chill spot to kind of hang out and eat, there's Burger U. That's right off of the front of the stadium. So there's a little road that goes up to that has shops and stuff along the path. It's right there, tucked into the corner, right across from the arena. If you're looking at the front of the arena, be on the right side. It's a cool spot, decent food. You've got, again, depending on your want or need to consume alcohol, there are plenty of spots. There's a college campus right there. You got Bar Louie there. You've got you got World of Beer. Well, it used to be World of Beer. Now it's called something else. But you've got a bunch of different places there that offer both food and alcohol and non-alcoholic drinks, depending on what your taste buds are. If you're going to venture out a little bit, check out the Milk District. Check out downtown Winter Park area. There's a ton of different food. Winter Park's more of a ritzy type of area. So if you want like fine dining, that kind of stuff, that's a great place to go. The Milk District. There's a ton of different enclaves now in Orlando. Orlando used to be very Disney. And by that, I mean, you had Cheney restaurants, etc. That's not the way anymore. Each area has its own kind of like food spots. There's even an area in Dr. Phillips where if you like good jazz, there's some good jazz bars out there that you can hang out and kind of check out. And it's all within driving distance. The nice thing about Orlando is we've got highways that you can get pretty much anywhere within about 30 minutes. So if you want a good night out, there's Dr. Phillips area. It's not just Disney. There's Dr. Phillips area. And there's others that I'm not even thinking about Downtown area has some nice spots off of downtown. I wouldn't recommend going to Orange Avenue, which is the main strip that goes through downtown. But there's several communities that are close to that you can go to and check out for food spots and all kinds of different entertainment.
Awesome. Excellent. Well, I wish I would be able to take your recommendations on some of those this weekend, but perhaps another time should be a good one. And I know there are plenty of fans that'll love to be making this trip to Orlando this weekend. So hopefully they show up and show out. And all we can hope for is that it's a day game, that maybe this fan base is a little dejected and doesn't get quite as loud as we know that the bounce house can be, and maybe that'll help out a little bit.
But you'll miss the light show. Since the last time BYU has been here, we've upgraded all of our lighting. We do fun things with the lighting. You've got the cell phone things that we do and all that other fun stuff. For those of you that have been, it's a whole different experience than the last time that you guys played. We played 3 times, if I recall correctly, twice in Provo and once at UCF. BYU fans, and I said this on the podcast, for UCF fans, stay classy. BYU fans have always been great. They've always shown up, and they're awesome people, very friendly, etc. But it's a whole different experience. It's more, especially at night, it's more, I won't say club environment, but that type of laser lights and light shows and dance type of music. So there's a lot of energy and people move around. But expect a good time. And, for UCF fans that may be listening, and make sure that you're on your P's and Q's, please, because the folks that come from BYU generally deserve it. I haven't really run across anybody in any of the games that has been anything other than gracious and wonderful.
Well, thank you. Appreciate it. And for all you UCF fans that may have stumbled upon this, please hit me up on Twitter. My algorithm for whatever reason hasn't picked up a lot of UCF action. So come interact with me. I'd love to. It's a fan base I'd love to be more engaged with. And also for everyone, all BYU fans, make sure that you go out there and check out the TheKnighted1s Podcast, the Big 12 Huddle podcast as well, and interact with Roger there on Twitter. Is there anything else that I left out to plug? Again, all of this will be in the description.
No, there's some more for you. There's some more things, but if you want to hit me up on Twitter, I generally post under Night Bengal. That's Night KNIGHT, and then Bengal because I'm a Bengals fan, unfortunately. So there's the Bengal part of it as well. Or you can hit us up at the TheKnighted1s as well. All
right. Excellent. Well, thank you so much. And as you asked me the other night, what does BYU say and what does they do? Does UCF have a hand sign or anything that you guys do as a cheer?
Not a hand sign, but we do say "Go Knights, charge on!" And of course, so it's "Go Knights," and then the other person says "Charge on!" And then when it comes to the stadium, one thing I will warn people who are going to the stadium, if you've never been to a UCF game, we always say Knights during the national anthem. When it says they prove through the night, we say Knights, that the flag was still there. So don't get offended by that. We do that everywhere we go. The only place we haven't done it is when we played the Naval Academy at the Naval Academy.
Fair enough.
Out of respect.
Obviously. Okay, great. Good to know. Fun to learn little traditions like that. Excellent. Well, thanks again for coming on. We look forward to the game this weekend, and hopefully BYU wins this one, but then UCF can go on and win some more games this season and make it back to a bowl game, but turn things around. And
I should be there in Provo next year, so I'm looking forward to a Cougar tail. So excited about that.
Excellent. Absolutely. So, all right. Well, thanks so much. Please, again, if you haven't already, I don't know what you're doing. Please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and go Cougs.
Go Knights.